Right, welcome to BIOL1309 Evolutionary Diversity, Video 2 about algae. Cleveland gave this lecture. I'm repeating what he is going to say with less details because my brain can't handle that much. Right, so algae, which is, you can see in this evolutionary tree, they are related to plants, but really only chlorophyta is the closest relative to plants, while these two have some differences. Rhodophyta will be the first um, group, I would say, that we talk about first, the red algae. Um, a little bit of background of red algae. So we have 4,000 to 6,000 species of them, and mostly marine seaweeds with only a handful of freshwater species. Mostly multicellular, with some that are unicellular. They grow on rocks attached to other seaweeds. Some are free floating, and they often grow in deep water. But a little bit of a tidbit. Interestingly, red algae is not a phylum. It contains a phylum, the biggest phylum of algae, but it is actually the division of a clade of a clade of a clade of the domain Eukaryota, which means it's quite confusing. So this is actually a division of a group of organisms. Uh, I will explain like brown algae and green algae later as well, so don't worry about it. Right, so they have chlorophyll A as primary photosynthetic pigments, with phytochlobilins as accessory ones. They absorb green and blue-green light very well, and they reflect red light, giving them the red appearance. And they use Floridian starch, not normal starch, Floridian starch. And they store this Floridian starch in cytoplasm. And then the cell walls of red algae has cellulose embedded in gel-like mixture of polygalactins, which is a sulfated polymer of galactose. It makes them slimy, and it inhibits other organisms from growing on them. Agar and carrageenan, which are things that you would use extracted from red algae. They contain this polygalactins, sulfated polygalactins, as a major component. So we're going to talk about a bit about the growth form. Caroline red algae, which is a order of red algae, will deposit calcium carbonate in the cell walls. So they will have two growth forms. One is this branched erect form, and the other is like fan-like crustose form. And this is the most common in red algae, the filamentous form. Filaments that are densely interwoven with mucilage, which is slime. But some are blade-like Porphyra. This is the blade body growth form. And then, so most red algae show sporic meiosis with alternation of generations. If you still remember, we have gametic meiosis, zygotic meiosis, and sporic meiosis. And sporic meiosis is the one with sporophytes and gametophytes. And for red algae, they have a triphasic life cycle with 3 phases. So a gametophyte and 2 phases of sporophytes. One is called the carposporophyte, and the other is the tetrasporophyte. Actually unique to red algae. So this triphasic life cycle is unique to red algae. So a little bit of an explanation of carposporophyte here. It's developed from the cycle, so after the male gamete and female gamete fuse, and it's actually grown in the female gametophyte. And it also has carposporangia, which is where mitosis occur to form diploid carpospores, and it helps in sexual reproduction. This is just talking about like isomorphic and heteromorphic, not too big of a deal, and heteromorphic may have selective advantage when it's dealing with seasonal changes. Okay, so we're going to talk about some examples of red algae right now. We have Polysiphonia, a filamentous red algae that is a marine red algae. Grows on rock, other algae, and mussels and such, and they grow quite deep in the sea. Some more examples, and this is an in-depth explanation of how the life cycle of red algae goes, specifically Polysiphonia. So we're gonna start here, the spores, the tetraspores that are haploid. So these spores here would grow into male or female gametophytes. They are unisexual, so there is no the same individual does not have this is does not produce or does is not male and female at the same time. That cannot produce egg and sperm at the same time. So the male will have the spermatotangium, which produces spermatia, which is sperm, and the female will have the carpogonium, which produces the egg, and then fusing, and then fertilization. The zygote is formed, and this is where the carposporophyte comes in. You can see the carposporophyte is within the female's body, inside the pericarp, and these are the carposporangia, which is where mitosis occur to form carpospores. And these carpospores are special in that they are diploid; they're not haploid. And then the germinating carpospore would form into a tetrasporophyte, and the tetrasporophyte would include tetrasporangia, which are parts of the individual that will undergo meiosis to spawn tetraspores. And this is meiosis, and these are haploid. So, and this type Polysiphonia is isomorphic. The male, female, and the sporophyte, they look the same. Ignore carposporophyte. You don't need to care about that when you consider isomorphic or heteromorphic. Right. Moving on to another genus, Porphyra, with blade-like algae, and this is actually Zichoi. Yes, our favorite. Okay, so again, we're gonna start talking about the life cycle. Again, triphasic, but heteromorphic. So we're gonna start from the spores. The spores here are again haploid, and they will develop into individuals that are not unisexual. So the individual is both male and female at the same time. The male parts, the spermatia, would well actually no, spermatia will be produced, and then fertilization occurs at the carpogenia, and then the carposporophyte, which is this part, I believe, again within the parent's body, dependent on the parent's body, and they release carpospores, which are haploid. Actually, sorry, which is diploid. Cut that out. Which is diploid, and then you would, and then these carpospores would actually land on shells of bivalve, and then they would grow into tetrasporophytes. So they are heteromorphic in that the gametophyte is actually this. This is the gametophyte. Large, big enough to be seen, eaten even. But the tetrasporophyte is actually microscopic and filamentous, not blade-like nor large. And this word, conchocellus, which actually describes the tetrasporophyte, it was originally thought to be a separate algae species. So this is a separate algae species, but no, it isn't. It's actually just a life cycle. So now it's kind of describing the part of a life cycle of this genus, Porphyra. So yeah, that is all about red algae. We will then move on to brown algae. Right. So brown algae of Phalophyta, which is actually a class. It's it's not a phylum, and this is what I talked about before: a subphylum, infraphylum, superclass, class. Brown algae with only about this much species. It's talked about here actually. Grows at shallow depths or 30 from sea level to around 30 meters, and then it's often the dominant species in that area. So the vegetative body, this part, is called the thallus. The thallus can either be branched filaments, these small branch filaments, or very large seaweeds, much like forming kelp forests. And these are the different structures of the phallus, with the blade, the big part, these blades, the stipe, which is kind of like the stem, and the holdfast, which is like the root, the anchor point of the algae. But one difference between the root and the holdfast of algae, the root of plants and holdfast of algae, is that the holdfast does not have any adaptation for absorption of minerals or water, unlike roots. Holdfast is only for anchoring, while roots does a multitude of things. And then growth forms. Oh, actually, there one more structure which is called the air bladder, which helps in buoyancy so that the algae can float and stay upright. Sargassum, one genus, which can be seen here. This is actually Hong Kong, 清水湾. And then Sargassum, we have in the Atlantic Ocean. And then this is like a massive pile of piled up seaweed on the beach in Miami, Florida. Yeah, it's not the best. But brown algae can be used as food as well. So I'm sure you know what hoi dai or crumble is. This is what we use as, or part, I believe like, I'm not sure if a genus or, but basically brown algae used as food. So some characteristics: chlorophyll as ANC is used for them to make as primary photosynthetic pigments, while carotenoids are accessory ones, and it includes fucoxanthin, which masks the color of the chlorophyll. So this, I believe, makes it look brown when the chlorophyll is like green. And they also store the food as laminarin, a polymer of glucose, not Floridian starch, and it's stored in the vacuole of cell, not cytoplasm. And the intercellular regions have algae mucilage, and this makes the seaweed flexible and gives it toughness to withstand the waves. And they also prevent drying of seaweed, and it also helps like inhibiting other organisms from living on the surface. But and then actually, algae is actually used in a lot of human products, so food, paint, cosmetics. Okay, so we're gonna now talk about the sexual reproduction of brown algae. Sporic meiosis. Yes, sporic meiosis. Laminaria. So again, So yeah, this is the life cycle of laminaria. We have the sporophyte. The sporophyte would have the sporangia, which produces spores. Zoospores just mean that the zoo just means mobile, spore is spore. So the mobile spores would then germinate and grow into gametophytes, which are microscopic filamentous and not like this blade giant structure. Again, heteromorphic. And then the sex organs are called antheridium and oogonium. The sperm are mobile, the eggs are not. They fuse and fertilize and grow into another individual. So the cycle. And then some brown algae uses gametic meiosis without alternation of generation, which is how we do, humans do. Rockweed does that. Fucus, mature phallus would produce sperm and egg as well that with meiosis, and then these would be released to the open waters, I believe, and then fuse, form into a new zygote, and then develop into a diploid individual. This is very simple stuff. Okay, now we move on to green algae, the final algae. Green algae, again, is a division of a clade of a clade of a clade of a clade of the domain Eukaryota. Bloody real algae is only like here, while chlorophyta is like one level lower. It's crazy. And I think this is wrong, like unironically. It contains over 7,000 recognized species, but I don't think it's 17,000 species. Who knows? Maybe I'm stupid. Anyways, they're mostly aquatic, so living in water. Some are terrestrial, living on a bunch of weird stuff, and then some are in symbiosis with fungi, like lichen. They can be uni or multicellular. It's still a big group. Don't get me wrong. So unicellular, non-motile, green algae, motile unicellular algae with flagella, so swimmers, and then we have the colonial high not non-motile, which is like a group of individuals together in a net-like structure. This is non-mobile, this is mobile, and this sphere is made a single layer made out of thousands or hundreds of biflagellated cells. They can move around, and then the juvenile sporoids, these greener things, are babies, yes, and then they will be released when the parent dies and opens. And more different multicellular filamentous, multicellular blade-like, and this one is interesting. Siphonous. So they are conocytic, which means that they only have one big cell wall. They do not have division of cell wall. They only have one big cell wall, but inside the cell wall they have many nuclei. So cell division occurs, it's normal, but there is no cell wall division. So only one cell wall, but many different nuclei inside the cell. Yeah, so these are some examples. Another example, sea grapes, quite famous. And then they have chlorophyll AB as photosynthetic pigments. The food is stored as starch, not Florian starch, not whatever the name is called for the brown algae. I don't remember off the top of my head. Inside chloroplast, and the cell walls are made of cellulose. These are the features shared with land plants, and that's why they have the shared ancestry between there's this shared ancestry before green algae and land plants. Remember this, important. And then we have sexual reproduction for green algae, and we have zygotic meiosis. This is finally something new for algae. So the zygote does not grow into an individual, but it will undergo meiosis to form haploid cells. These haploid individuals would develop and then produce gametes and then fuse and fertilize. Okay, so this is one genus. I'm not gonna pronounce the name. Oh, so you see here the zoospores, the mobile spores. They would go and germinate and form into a haploid filamentous phallus, and then they would produce sperm and egg. I believe this is like the same the same individual having male and producing male and female gametes, I believe. And then, or this might be from a different individual. I'm not too sure. You might have to look it up yourself. So the sperm, this one I believe, would enter the egg. Well, yeah, would fuse with the egg, and then form the zygote. And the zygote just performs meiosis to form more spores. And for more, a different zygotic meiosis for Spirodria, a different genus. So there are tubes that form adjacent. Oh, sorry, there are conjugation tubes that form between adjacent filaments, and they will connect. And one part of the cell would go combine with the other, and it would form the zygote. This is 2N, 1N, 1N, 1N. And I believe this is the one that would split into 4 spores, but only one would survive. The other three would be degraded. And then this is sporadic meiosis with the alternation of generations. Yeah, with isomorphic, this is pretty similar to one of the red algae examples. Again, the sporophyte produces spores that are haploid and then form into haploid individuals that produces gametes. The gametes fuse and fertilize into a diploid cycle that develops into a diploid sporophyte. Yeah, it's pretty much the things that we've talked about before. Right, finally, this is the conclusion and kind of like why green algae and land plants is more closely related to each other, because both here both use chlorophyll A and B, and they store food in chloroplasts, and they store food as starch, while green algae uses chlorophyll A and C with carotenoids and store food in vacuoles and store as like laminaria. Is that the genus name? Hold on. It is laminarin. The food storage is known as laminarin. So in laminarin, while Rhodophyta, red algae, uses chlorophyll A and phycobilins and store food as Floridian starch and stored in cytoplasm. So that is the end for algae. I hope you have enjoyed, and I hope you have understood more than you would just look at it yourself. If my video didn't help, I'm sorry. The production quality is pretty bad. I'm pretty tired right now. I also re-recorded the video a few times. My apologies, and yeah, and I hope that me including some of the bits from Wikipedia also showed like the different naming of our different different categories of these algae is kind of funky. They're not like a phylum. They're a division of a clade or a class. It's not like they have their own concrete separation. I originally thought that these names means phylum or they are under phylum, but no, they're not. They're like upper or lower phylum. It's a bit funky, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna see more later as we go on the journey of BIOL1309 evolutionary diversity. So, anyways, this will be the end, and yeah, I hope you have enjoyed. I will see you next time when maybe after I don't know, after the next lecture when I have time and the willpower to make the next video. I'll see you then. Bye.